Hello ladies and gentlemen. I decided to make this YouTube video because I've noticed that there's not very many personal YouTube videos about being hard of hearing. So I figured I'd go ahead and record mine and tell y'all my background. First off, I was born with nerve deafness in both my ears, about an 80% hearing loss. Wear these. In both my ears. I've been wearing hearing aids since I was about 6 months old. At least that's what my medical records say. I did know a little bit of sign language when I was younger. The last memory I have of it was I was with some class and we went to a mall, and I remember seeing these unicorn sheets, bed sheets that I liked so much. And when we got back to the classroom, I was arguing with another girl. I said it was purple, and she said it was pink. To this day, I still maintain that it was purple. Anyway, after that, I must have been about 5 or 6 years old. My family and I moved to Alice Springs, Australia, for my dad's job, and we were living there for about 2.5 years. Alice Springs was a very small town. I don't know what it's like now. This was like 20 years ago, but at the time it was very small. We were practically living in the outback. In the school that I went to, I was probably the only special needs person going there, kid going there. They would teach their basic math and English and all that, but over there they concentrated more on the environment, survival, outdoors, stuff like that. The nerve deafness that I got was a genetic trait that my mother also has, and when she was a kid she was taught how to lip read. Since we were in Australia when I was a kid, I was never taught how to read lips. And soon after we moved to Australia, I began to forget American Sign Language. I stopped using it. And now the only thing I know is like pretty much the alphabet. Anyway, when we were about, I guess when I was about 7 or 8 years old, we came back to the States. I went back to a normal elementary school, and I started taking speech lessons. I think they probably lasted for 4 or 5 years. They would pull me out every week, at least once, maybe twice a week, to have an hour-long speech lesson. By the time I got into high school, I told them to stop doing that. I hated being treated differently from other kids in my class. I was self-conscious. I did not want people to know that I had a hearing disability of any kind. So they agreed to stop pulling me out of class for speech lessons. And it was around that time, right before I started high school, that I went and got the in-the-canal hearing aids. Now that I'm older, I'm really surprised that the audiologist that I saw at that time recommended those hearing aids to me, because with the severity of my hearing impairment, those hearing aids were not good enough. And I ended up wearing them for at least 5, maybe about 6 or 7 years. And during that time, well, to begin with, I wasn't very social. I wasn't very talkative. But after I got the in-the-canal hearing aids, which at the time I thought were awesome because you could not really see them unless you were looking for them in the ear. I just felt very self-conscious, and I did not want people to know that I was different from them. But after a while, I began to drop out of this social circle, I guess. I still had friends, but I did not interact with them very much, especially in groups. And back then, I just did not have enough self-awareness to realize that these hearing aids were not good enough for my hearing impairment. I was not hearing what I needed to hear from people, from friends, in groups, in class, in general. But at that time, it felt like it was normal, I guess, sort of. It wasn't until I was about to start college, when I was about 19 or 20, when I realized that in the canal hearing aids are not good enough for somebody that has an 80% hearing loss. So I went back to these. It was very joyful to have them back. And by then I had the maturity to not let it bother me that people could see my hearing aids whenever I had my hair back. And now I love them. I don't mind it at all. They're like my fashion accessory. But anyway, by then I did forget how to use sign language, if I even knew how to use it much at all. I don't really remember that far back. But even with these behind the ear hearing aids, they work well. They're digital. You can program them in a way where you can reduce background noise when you're in a noisy area, when you go to a bar or whatever, and that's really cool. But even still, I still have issues, and there are times like these that I wish I had learned how to read lips. And there have been some people that come up to me thinking that I know sign language, which I don't, not anymore. But because of that, I always felt like I was in limbo, kind of in between. You know, there were people that could hear normally, talk to each other, and then, you know, that's all good and everything. And then there were people that had no hearing at all, or very little hearing, and they knew sign language very well. And they knew other people that knew sign language, and they could communicate and all that. And I felt like I was in between. And I was also having some other issues in my childhood that made my life a little bit difficult, especially with the self-esteem issue. But that is something that I'm finally getting to work on now. It's going to take a lot of time. 29 years old, and I'm just now getting to work on issues that have been bothering me for a long time. Anyway, that's all I can think of right now. I'll probably make another video later on. Until next time.